Greetings, dear viewers. First of all, I am giving the news headlines of the latest news of the country and abroad. Bangladesh's PM resigns and flees country as protesters storm her residence. Warning signs of US recession may be bad news for Kamala Harris. Bangladesh's Prime Minister has resigned and fled the country after weeks of protests against a quota system for government jobs descended into violence and grew into a broader challenge to her 15-year rule. Dhaka, Bangladesh. Bangladesh's Prime Minister resigned and fled the country Monday after weeks of protests against a quota system for government jobs descended into violence and grew into a broader challenge to her 15-year rule. Thousands of demonstrators stormed her official residence a day after nearly 100 died in the unrest. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's departure threatens to create even more instability in the nation on India's border, already dealing with a series of crises, from high unemployment and corruption to climate change. Hours after the embattled leader was seen on TV boarding a military helicopter with her sister, the country's military chief, General Waqar Az-Zaman, said he would seek the president's guidance on forming an interim government. He promised that the military would launch an investigation into the deadly crackdown on student-led protests that fueled outrage against the government. "Keep faith in the military. We will investigate all the killings and punish the responsible," he said. "I have ordered that no army and police will indulge in any kind of firing." He met opposition politicians, including the head of the now-banned Jamaat-e-Islami party, and civil society members before making his statement. The protests began peacefully as frustrated students demanded an end to a quota system for government jobs that they said favored those with connections to the Prime Minister's Awami League party. But the demonstrations have since morphed into an unprecedented challenge to Hasina and the party. The 76-year-old, who was the longest-serving female head of government, was elected for a fourth consecutive term in a January vote that was boycotted by her main opponents. Thousands of opposition members were jailed in the lead-up to the polls, and the US and the UK denounced the result as not credible, though the government defended it. Hasina had cultivated ties with powerful countries, including both India and China. But under her, relations with United States and other Western nations have come under strain, as they have expressed concerns over human rights violations and press freedoms in the predominantly Muslim nation of 470 million people. Her political opponents have previously accused her of growing increasingly autocratic and called her a threat to the country's democracy. And many now say the unrest is a result of that authoritarian streak. Hasina arrived Monday in a city in India on the border with Bangladesh in an army helicopter, according to a military official who spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to release the information to the media. It was not clear where she would go next. As she fled, people stormed her residence, taking furniture and pulling food from the refrigerators. Protests have continued even after the Supreme Court last month ruled that the quota system, which set aside up to 30% of government jobs for family members of veterans who fought in Bangladesh's War of Independence against Pakistan, must be drastically cut. The government attempted to quell the demonstrations with force, leaving nearly 300 people dead since mid-July. At least 95 people, including at least 14 police officers, died in clashes in the capital on Sunday, according to the country's leading Bengali-language daily newspaper, Pratham Alo. Hundreds more were injured. At least 11,000 people have been arrested in recent weeks. The unrest has also resulted in the closure of schools and universities across the country, and authorities at one point imposed a shoot-on-sight curfew. Authorities also shut off mobile internet on. Donald Trump's message to US voters has been consistent as he seeks to win a second term in the White House. The economy under Joe Biden has been a disaster. Until recently, the hard data has not supported Trump's argument. The US has been comfortably the fastest growing of the G7 leading industrial nations since the COVID pandemic. Unemployment has been low by historic standards. America's self-sufficiency in energy meant it suffered a less severe inflation shock than Europe after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Yet the former US president now has some evidence to back up his case. The latest set of US jobs figures, released last week, showed the labor market cooling fast. Payroll growth in July slowed to 114,000. about half the average of 215,000 in the previous 12 months and well below economists' expectations. The unemployment rate rose from 4.1% to 4.3%. That set alarm bells ringing. Financial markets have been betting heavily on the US economy being able to shrug off the impact of higher interest rates. The latest GDP figures, showing annual growth of close to 3%, supported that view. But the cracks in the labor market prompted fears that the economy might now be heading for a hard landing. The 12% drop in Japan's Nikkei index was in large part driven by concerns that the world's biggest economy might be cooling fast. The Federal Reserve has a rule of thumb measure, known as the SUM rule, for gauging whether the US economy is in recession. Named after the economist Claudia Sum, this states that when the 3-month moving average of the US unemployment rate is 0.5 percentage points or more above its low over the prior 12 months, the economy is in the early months of recession. Last week's jobless report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics showed the SUM rule was on the brink of being triggered. As the consultancy Capital Economics pointed out, the rule will be met next month unless the unemployment rate falls back. Historically, the SUM rule has been a good predictor of looming US recessions, and it has been quoted widely in recent days by those arguing that the Federal Reserve has left it too long to cut interest rates. There has been speculation that, having fallen behind the curve, the Fed may not even wait until its next scheduled meeting next month, and may announce an emergency cut in the coming days. Some economists warn against putting too much store by the SUM rule. Dhaval Joshi, an analyst at BCA Research, said, "A decoupling between robust growth in the economy and steadily rising unemployment is unprecedented in our lifetimes. Through the past 60 years, whenever the US unemployment rate has increased by 0.5% in a year, taking it to the cusp of recession, GDP growth has also been on the cusp of recession, that is, until now." Joshi said unemployment was rising not because of widespread layoffs but because labor supply had been increasing faster than labor demand. The stock market looked more vulnerable to a recession than the real economy. Tech stocks, in particular those exposed to the artificial intelligence boom, have been among the heaviest fallers. Right now, if we should fear a US recession, the question is, a recession in what? As in 2001, the biggest risk is a severe recession in the frothy parts of the stock market, said Joshi. But it is not just rising unemployment. There are other warning signs for Kamala Harris as she seeks to fend off Trump's attacks on the current administration's economic record. The performance of the delivery company UPS is often seen as a gauge of how well the US economy is doing. Last month it failed to meet analysts' estimates and pared back its growth forecasts for the rest of 2024. With the presidential election only 3 months away, the economy is not about to plunge into immediate recession. But signs that households are reining in their spending is bad news for the